I keep hearing my daughter call for me at night, but she's never awake. It's been a long week. My wife took a trip upstate to visit her parents, and I stayed behind for work. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. Just a few quiet nights at home with our daughter. She caught something 2 days after her mum left. Just a little fever at first, nothing serious. Kids get bugs all the time, right? I told my wife not to worry. I had it under control. The thing is, the fever never really went away. It'll break for a few hours, she'll seem fine, and then it comes back even hotter. She's been too tired to get out of bed for more than a few minutes at a time. I've been camped out on the couch with the baby monitor next to me so I can hear if she wakes up in the middle of the night. The monitor's old, one of those bulky ones. The speaker hums from the white noise machine we keep in her room. I keep it on even when I don't need to. Maybe because the sound makes the house feel less empty. The first time I heard her whisper, I thought she was calling for water. It was past midnight. I remember the way her voice crackled through the speaker. Tired, Daddy. I went to her room, but she was fast asleep. Her lips were dry. Her hair was stuck to her forehead. I almost woke her to check her temperature, but she looked peaceful for once. So I just stood there, watching her sleep for a moment, and went back to the couch. I told myself I imagined it. Probably the monitor catching some old feedback, or maybe just my mind replaying her voice from earlier. It has been an exhausting few days for the both of us, so that wasn't out of the question. That night continued, without any more interruptions. The next night is when things took a turn for the worse. I had put her down to sleep around 8 p.m. She was run down and exhausted. Body aches, fever, and a headache. I had been giving her medicine throughout the day, and it seemed to only have a slight impact on her. In my mind, the only thing that was going to help was rest, and lots of it. She was asleep not 5 minutes after I put her in the crib. My nightly routine didn't change. I grabbed the pillows and blankets from my bed and headed to the couch to be closer to her room in case she needed me. I plugged the baby monitor in and began to drift off to sleep. I shot up. My daughter was yelling for me, "Daddy, come get me." "I'm coming, baby." I yelled loud enough for her to hear. I made my way down the hallway to her bedroom. I swung the door open, only to find her sleeping. Motionless, I stood there confused. I couldn't have imagined this again. I stepped into the room. Only the sound of her soft breathing and the white noise machine. I stepped closer to her crib. There she was, sleeping, not moving, not coughing, nothing. I didn't want to wake her, but I was shaken. This was weird, scary if I'm being honest. I heard her calling me. I know I did. This wasn't exhaustion. I returned to the living room, confused and worried. Was she talking in her sleep? Was she just seeing if I was nearby? I wasn't sure of what was going on, but I was starting to get worried. I felt fine, but maybe I was getting sick. I did feel a little warm, but had no other symptoms. I swear, just as I was drifting off to sleep, "Daddy, I don't feel good." I didn't answer. I just ran straight to her room, nearly ripping the door off the hinges as I opened it. Sleeping, she was sleeping. I couldn't believe it. She had to be talking in her sleep. Maybe her fever had gotten worse. I stepped closer, this time determined to figure out what was going on. I reached into her crib to feel her forehead. I recoiled the moment my hand touched her. Intense heat radiated from her forehead. My hand hurt. In awe, I looked at my palm. A burn mark, My daughter was producing enough heat to burn my hand. Asterisk, my daughter needed to go to the hospital. She needed help, more than I can provide. I grabbed a few towels and rushed back to her room. I scooped her up and brought her to the car. I drove faster than I should, but I needed to get her there. I ran through the emergency room doors and straight to the check-in counter. Help me, please. My daughter, she's burning up. I explained the situation the best I could. The worry on my face, mixed with the details of the situation, must have struck a chord with the nurses, because they escorted us to a room right away. I placed my daughter on the bed. Through all of this chaos, she was still asleep. After asking a few more questions and connecting an IV, the nurse left and told me the doctor would be in as soon as possible. I grabbed a chair and sat right next to her bed. She began to move and stir awake. A scream louder than I ever heard erupted from my daughter. Her back arched and vocal cords began to fry. I jumped to my feet. My ears were ringing from the sheer volume of the scream. I could have sworn they began to bleed. Baby. Baby, what's happening? Tell Daddy. The scream continued. I ran into the hallway, searching for a doctor, a nurse, anyone that could help. No one nearby. I rounded the corner and saw a nurse behind a desk. Help me, please. My daughter, she's screaming. Something is wrong. The nurse paged for a doctor and followed me back when we walked in there. Was my daughter asleep? The nurse walked to her bedside and felt her forehead. She said she was warm to the touch, but not extraordinarily hot. My daughter's eyes began to flutter open. Daddy, where are we? Tears began to well in my eyes. We are at the hospital, honey. Something is wrong, and these nice nurses and doctors are going to help us. The doctor came in about 15 minutes later, clipboard in hand and calm in that practiced, detached way that only doctors can manage. He asked questions, ran through the motions, blood work, vitals, a scan. When it was all done, he smiled. Good news. Everything looks perfectly normal. I stared at him. Normal. Her temperature was through the roof. She was screaming. You didn't hear it. He shook his head. Look, she's stable now. Fevers can spike and drop rapidly in children, especially if they're fighting something off. You both seem to be exhausted beyond belief. Your mind can begin to play tricks on you when you lack this much sleep. I wanted to believe him, but the words didn't make sense. I held up my hand. Then how do you explain this? He leaned in. There was nothing there, no redness, no blister, no mark at all. My voice cracked. It burned me. I swear to God. He gave me that polite, cautious look, the kind that says we've seen this before. I felt weak. My legs began to shake. I was going to pass out. The doctor grabbed a chair and told me to have a seat. They brought me water and did their best to calm me. It didn't work at first, but eventually I regained the little strength I had left. They discharged us a few hours later. The drive home was silent, except for the hum of the tires on wet pavement. Every so often, I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She was asleep again, face calm, breathing soft. I wanted to feel relief. Instead, all I felt was dread. By the time I pulled into the driveway, it was almost dawn. I carried her inside, tucked her into bed, and turned to find my wife standing in the doorway. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from exhaustion, like she hadn't slept in days. She kissed our daughter on the head, and I brought her back to our room and grabbed the baby monitor. We hugged for what felt like forever. Then She stepped back. "Sit down," she said quietly. "We need to talk." I sat on the couch, still in the same clothes I'd driven to the hospital in. My hands were trembling. Not from fear, at least not exactly. From confusion, exhaustion. My wife sat across from me, elbows on her knees, staring at the floor. The house was quiet. Even the hum of the fridge seemed to fade. She didn't look angry. She looked defeated. "Before I say anything," she started, "you need to know I believe you." That should have helped, but it didn't. It only made my stomach drop. "I saw it," I said. "She was burning." And then the screaming, she nodded slowly. "I know. What do you mean, you know?" She lifted her eyes to mine. There was no hesitation in her voice, no confusion, just a terrible kind of calm. "It happened to me, too." The words didn't make sense at first. She must have seen that on my face, because she went on. "When I was little, 3, maybe 4, my mum said I had a fever that wouldn't break. They took me to the hospital just like you did with her. Ran every test they could think of. Everything came back fine. The next day, I was perfectly healthy." She let out a shaky breath. "My mum told me later. I wasn't the first." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "It happened once before. To my grandmother's baby sister." She swallowed hard. "Her mother, my great-grandmother, was desperate. The doctors couldn't help. So she went to see someone, an old woman on the edge of town who promised she could save the child." My wife's voice trembled. There was a ritual, a promise. The fever stopped that night, but something came with it. My chest tightened. Something. My mum always said it was meant to protect us. A spirit that guards the bloodline. But it doesn't feel like protection. She looked away, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It feels like it's waiting for something." The room felt colder. Waiting for what? I asked. She hesitated. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. "For the next one." Her words hung in the air. I waited for her to explain, but she didn't. She just stared past me, eyes fixed on something that wasn't there. "The next what?" I asked. My throat felt tight. I frowned. "You mean this thing? This spirit? It's going after her." She didn't answer. "I need you to tell me the truth," I said, leaning forward. "Is she in danger?" That got her attention. She blinked, looked at me, and finally said, "She's not in danger. Not yet, not yet. My mom used to say the spirit watches the bloodline. It doesn't hurt the ones it chooses, it marks them. The fever is how it starts." I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. "Marks them for what?" She shook her head. "I don't know. My mother didn't either. She said her grandmother refused to talk about it. All she ever said was that the child always survives, but something else doesn't." The room felt smaller, heavy. "What do you mean something else doesn't?" She looked down at her hands. Her fingers were trembling. "There's always a cost. My great-grandmother's baby survived, but her husband didn't. I survived. My father passed not long after. The silence that followed was unbearable." She said it was protecting the bloodline, I murmured, more to myself than her. "So why does it feel like it's punishing us?" My wife didn't answer. She just stared at the baby monitor on the coffee table. The faint static hummed through the speaker. Then, from somewhere deep in the white noise, came a soft, broken whisper, "Daddy." But this time, it wasn't our daughter's voice. My wife's head snapped toward the sound. Her face went white. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. She nodded, but didn't move. Her eyes glistened like she was remembering something she didn't want to. Neither of us wanted to. "Believe it." The voice came again, faint and broken. "Daddy, come in here." She stood, but not out of curiosity, out of fear. Her movements were slow, hesitant. "Don't," I said. But she was already walking down the hallway. She stopped at the doorway to our daughter's room. The light from the night light spilled out into the hall. Our daughter lay still, her breathing calm. My wife whispered, "She's going to be fine." Her voice cracked on the last word, like she was trying to convince herself of it. I stepped beside her. We both just stared at the crib. The monitor in her hand hissed softly. Then, through the speaker, so faint I almost missed it, came a voice, not my daughter's, not my wife's, a whisper, cold and close. "She is." The monitor went silent. For a long moment, neither of us moved. My wife's hand found mine, trembling. Her eyes never left the screen. And then, barely louder than a breath, she said, "It's already chosen." Something in me just snapped. Instinct, panic, love, I don't know. I rushed past her and scooped our daughter into my arms. Her skin was burning again, hotter than before. Her head rolled back and a hoarse scream tore from her throat. "Help me." I yelled, "Do something." But my wife just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You can't stop it." My daughter convulsed. Her hands clawed at my shirt, her little fingers digging into my wrist. That's when it happened. The pain, it was like fire under my skin. It started where she grabbed me and crawled up my arm, slow and deliberate. I tried to pull away, but she held on tight. Impossibly strong for someone so small. Her eyes snapped open. For one horrible moment, they weren't her eyes at all. They were black, deep and endless, reflecting nothing. Then she gasped, "Daddy." Her voice was small again. Familiar. The burning stopped. She blinked, dazed, then looked toward the doorway. "Mummy, you're home," she said softly, a smile spreading across her face. "I missed you." My wife dropped to her knees, sobbing, clutching her to her chest. "She's okay," she kept whispering. "She's okay." But she wasn't looking at me. I stumbled backward, clutching my wrist. The skin was blistered and red, the veins beneath it glowing faintly, pulsing like they were alive. Every heartbeat felt wrong, slower, hotter. Something was moving inside me. My daughter is sleeping soundly again. My wife is sitting beside her, humming the same lullaby she used to sing when she was a baby. There's relief in her eyes, but she won't look at me. Maybe she already knows. My hand won't stop shaking. The burn has spread up my arm, moving towards my chest. Every pulse feels heavier, slower, like my heart's fighting something it can't win against. It doesn't hurt anymore. That's the worst part. The pain's gone, but the warmth stayed. Something's alive inside me, breathing, waiting. Our daughter is fine now. Her fever's gone. Mine's just beginning. Whatever saved our daughter didn't leave. It just found a new place to live. The baby monitor caught someone singing to my daughter of "Never believed in ghosts or anything supernatural." I work in it, my wife's a nurse, we both rely on logic and evidence. Asterisk, but something happened last week that neither of us can explain. and it's still keeping us awake at night. We have a 1-year-old daughter, Emily, asterisk, like most parents. We keep a baby monitor in her room, one of those newer ones with video and two-way audio. Sometimes it picks up static or faint noises, probably interference from a neighbor's Wi-Fi or a phone. It's never been a big deal, until last Tuesday, around 3:10 a.m., we woke up to the sound of the monitor crackling. At first, it was just static. Then came a voice. Soft, quiet, a woman's voice. She was humming a lullaby. It wasn't one I recognized, but my wife sat up instantly. Her eyes went wide. She whispered, "That's my mom's song." Her mother passed away almost 2 years ago. She used to sing that exact lullaby to our daughter when she was still alive, same tune, same tone, even the little hum at the end of each verse. I got up, half asleep, thinking maybe the monitor was catching a radio signal. But when I reached the nursery door, the humming stopped. The room was quiet. Emily was asleep in her crib. Everything looked normal, until I glanced at the window. It faces our backyard, but our nursery is on the 2nd floor. There's no way anyone could be standing outside. Still, I felt watched. I went back to our room, and that's when my wife gasped. The monitor, still on, was showing Emily's crib again. But behind her, in the reflection of the window, there was a figure. A woman, faint, blurry, but definitely there. Long hair, pale skin, and a small, gentle smile. She was stroking Emily's hair and humming. We just stared at the monitor. Then the image flickered and the woman turned her head toward the camera. The screen went black dot. When we checked the room again, the window was slightly open, just enough for the curtain to move. We've both been sleeping in the nursery since that night. The window stays locked. The monitor stays off. But every night around 3 a.m., we still hear it faint humming from the hallway. Always the same song. Someone was living in my ceiling. I never believed stories about strangers secretly living in people's houses. I always assumed they were exaggerated internet tales or mental health cases. Asterisk, but what happened to me last year in Portland changed the way I think about privacy, safety, and what it means to be alone in your own home. It started with subtle noises. At first, it was just light tapping above my bedroom late at night. It didn't sound like pipes or an animal. It was too conscious, too deliberate. Asterisk, I asked my landlord about it, and he brushed it off as the building settling. Friends joked that it was ghosts, or that I was working too much and hearing things. So I ignored it. But the tapping didn't stop. It grew more frequent, happening not just late at night, but early in the morning too. Asterisk, one morning I woke up, convinced someone had whispered from above me. It was such a soft sound that I couldn't tell if it was real or part of a dream. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. About a week later, things escalated. The tapping changed locations. It wasn't above me anymore. It started coming from inside the wall next to my bed, then from the direction of the air vent. Asterisk, it sounded like fingertips brushing metal. I turned off my fan to get rid of the background noise, and the room went heavy and silent. Then I heard breathing. Slow, controlled breathing. Not the kind of breathing you hear from a neighbor through a wall. This was close. Too close. I stared at the vent, my heart pounding. I told myself I was imagining it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Asterisk, I grabbed my phone. turned on the flashlight, and aimed it directly at the vent. The moment the light hit the slits, I saw two eyes staring back at me. Human eyes, wide open, unblinking, reflecting the beam of my flashlight like an animal caught in headlights. I froze in place. The eyes didn't move. The breathing didn't change. It felt like whoever was behind that vent had been staring at me long before I turned on the light. Then the vent cover shifted. Not much, just enough to tell me that someone's fingers were hooked on the inside of it. My body reacted before my brain could. I grabbed my keys and ran out of the apartment barefoot. I didn't stop until I was in the parking lot, calling 911 with shaking hands. I couldn't stop staring at my bedroom window from outside. At one point, the light flicked on, then off. Whoever was in the vent was now inside my room. The police arrived within minutes. They checked my apartment but didn't find anyone. Then they accessed the attic crawl space that ran above several units. It was tight and dusty, barely tall enough to crouch. But what they found made my skin crawl. Someone had been living up there. There was a sleeping bag, a stack of granola bar wrappers, empty water bottles, and a small pile of personal items that belonged to me. Hair ties, receipts I had thrown away, and a single sock I thought I'd lost in the laundry. There was also a flashlight, a cheap one with dying batteries. Then they found a phone. The phone wasn't locked. Inside were dozens of photos taken through the vent. Photos of my room, photos of me asleep, photos of me changing, photos of me working on my laptop, all taken from the same angle, through the vent above my bed. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that. I stayed at a friend's place while I packed up my belongings. The police never caught the person. They think he entered the attic crawl space through an unlatched maintenance door on the roof. But none of us know how long he'd been up there, or how many times he climbed down while I slept. I moved to a different part of the city, installed cameras, and bought metal vent covers with screws. I check every closet when I get home, and I still wake up sometimes thinking I hear tapping. Maybe it's nothing now, but it wasn't nothing before. People laugh about paranoia, but paranoia is just awareness sharpened by experience. When something feels wrong in your own home, don't ignore it. I wish I hadn't.